All right, here we go. We are live. Good afternoon, my fellow comic book utopians. My name is Chris. This is my channel, We Love Comics. And today, I thought I'd do something different. I do have some new videos coming soon. I actually have some more comics I actually got. Just when I think the rivers run dry, seems other things happen to come up and situations allow me to continue to do what I love and hopefully what you guys enjoy. So I also have some EGS comics I'll be doing an unboxing earlier this week. So there'll be plenty of things for you guys that come to my channel for you to enjoy. Today's just going to be a live Q&A. Basically, you can ask me anything you want, even stuff that's not comic related. I will try my best to answer them. And what I recommend is put your questions in all caps, so this way I can see it easier. Anybody that does a super chat, which obviously you don't have to, but if you do, it's automatically going to pop up in a different font, so I'm going to see it quickly. And I will always respond to those before anyone else's as a thank you for the support. But obviously, I'll go through all of the questions that I can answer. So make sure you're in the live chat, which is, if you look where you're typing, to the top left-hand area, you'll see it'll either say top chat or live chat. If you do live chat, it's going to show every chat. So it makes it easier, and I make sure I do the same so I don't miss something. If I do miss it, please let me know. I will go in order as the questions have been asked, but I might miss something if there's a lot of people that are asking questions. So just be patient, and if I do miss something after a couple of minutes or so, or skip one, please let me know. But again, if it's not in all caps, I may not have seen it. So Comic Journey is here. He loves my AI, so I wanted to make sure I did one. I'm going to do them all dedicated to Comic Journey because he is a AI enthusiast, so welcome. Let's say hello to everybody in the live chat. We got James Logan and GT Key Comic who were here before the video started. I think those were done yesterday, so I don't know if they're here, but shout out to them anyway. Andrew Jensen is here. We've got Dr. Valencia Designs in the live chat. Collector's Inventory is here. And Cup of Joe so far. Right now, I cannot see how many people are watching. Okay, I opened up another link to the actual video. So right now, 6 people watching and 4 of you hit the like button. So that's not a bad ratio. So thank you very much about that. Just a quick reminder that not this Sunday coming up, but next Sunday, the 18th, I'm going to be doing my live auction. One of the books have already been sold. That's the advantage of watching the sneak preview video I did a couple of days ago. So Blondie #1 has already been sold, and as a matter of fact, they paid for it earlier this morning or last night, and I already mailed it out. So things will be packaged incredibly well, and they will be shipped out incredibly fast. So if you want to, you can do it after this video is done, or you can do it now. I'll leave it up to you. But watch the video I did a couple of days ago, and I might show in between if there's not a lot of questions, which I already see there are a couple, but if there's some spaces, I'll show some of the comics in the sneak preview here. So you can make an offer for them before the auction and do what one of the people did with the Blondie comic and get it before the auction so you don't risk either spending more or losing it completely. So with that being said, let's put on the video camera so you guys can not have to stick with the AI art, which I know Comic Journey loves so well. So congratulations to all of you that are here. Hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions in the best of my ability. And let's start with it. Andrew Jensen did say he'll be working when this goes on, so he did that comment beforehand, but he's going to watch it later. So shout out to Andrew, even though you're not here right now. And he was the first one to ask a question. And he starts out, is pressing and cleaning one act, or is it 2 separate processes done to your comic? It's an easy one to answer. It actually is 2 separate processes. The dry cleaning, there's a couple of different techniques, but the main technique is basically they will put it on a specific kind of pressing machine. It almost looks like if you've gone to a dry cleaner when they put the clothes down and they press the lever and kind of steam clean it. Some people will add a little bit of moisture. I know that places like PGX that I deal with all the time, they don't add any moisture, and I don't know their full details of the pressings, but their pressings are top notch and one of the more inexpensive ones. But I actually looked up because I saw this question was already posted before I got here, so I wanted to talk to you about basically the processes for dry cleaning. So I'll make it quick. The comic book dry cleaning is the process of removing stains or production roller marks using no harsh chemicals or solvents. So be careful when you have somebody adding chemicals to a comic to clean it, because that can be considered restoration. And I've seen other channels that do their own dry cleanings and they add chemicals, and they do have them, they'll send them to places like CGC and they'll come back restored, or at least mention that it's been cleaned. So the way it's supposed to be done is they don't use any harsh chemicals or solvents. They can get out things like stains, not all the time. They can get out things like aging, mildew, rust migration, which I might do with one of the comics I got back from my 4 PGX comics, where they said the staples were rusty. So you can get rid of the rust. You just can't use harsh chemicals and stuff. So I'm probably going to do that and resubmit it. Things like rust migration, like I said, crayons, pen marks. You know, I don't think you're going to get out a pen mark. You might get a little bit. It might fade a little bit, but I don't think that's going to help the grade at all. Pencil marks, yes. Date stamps, which I wouldn't even recommend doing, because they do not judge the grade, especially on an older book like a Gold and a Silver Age book with date stamps. And a lot of people, including myself, actually like the date stamps, so I wouldn't touch that. And they say, or other hazards along the test of time. And they even state many of these cannot be removed. But you know, it's always beneficial, especially like light mildew and dust and things like that. Sometimes pencil marks, depending on, you know, if there's an indent from the pressure of the pencil. But they are absolutely two separate things. And definitely, if you're going to get your books graded, I would highly recommend doing pressings and dry cleanings, even in newer books, because, you know, the difference between a 9.6 and a 9.8 could be, depending on the book, hundreds if not thousands of dollars. So for the small amount that you'd have to pay to do it would be worth it. And I can't speak for any other company. I can only speak with the one that I've dealt with, which is PGX. If it doesn't need a pressing, they're not going to charge you for a pressing. So you really have nothing to lose, because if it doesn't need a pressing, you won't be charged. But if it does need a pressing, that means they can improve the grade, so it'll be absolutely worth the amount that they'll charge. So if you're going to deal with anybody that does pressings and dry cleanings, ask if they have that kind of benefit for you, where they're not going to just charge you regardless if it needed it or not. Those are the people you don't want to do business with. All right, so Dr. Valencia Designs says, what is the biggest misconception about you, Chris, and your channel? That is pretty easy. The misconception, which actually ultimately closed me down. Oh, I shut down my original channel. I seem to have this unfair reputation. I really don't even know what it is, because no one's really said anything. I'm a former New Yorker, but I lived in New York for the first 49 years of my life. Lived on Long Island all my life. I'm Sicilian Italian. I'm a Scorpio. I'm Gen X also. So I was basically raised where, you know, if somebody confronted me, you confronted them back. So back in the days of my early channel, when people used to attack me and everything, I would go right back at them. I've definitely changed since then, but I would never instigate fights, but I was never one to back down from one. And I think that maybe built up a reputation based on some people that were kind of jealous of how fast my channel was growing, because I already had my first 1,000 subscribers within like the first month and a half of making my channel. And when I used to do live shows, and some of the people that used to go on the live shows with me at those times can attest to this, I would have between 1,000 and 1,500 people watching my shows. Now, I did have them where it would be like on a Tuesday at 8 o'clock, or Thursday at 6 o'clock or whatever. I would have specific times every week. So it was like a TV program. People would be able to know when to watch a video. Like now I just do more random. But yeah, I think because I'm not afraid to speak my mind, give my opinion, even if it goes against many people that will get comics for monetary gain, I will speak about things that could potentially lower the value of the comics that I feel are not wrong. Or, for example, people selling things like Mylars and things like that. I used to tell people, Mylars are the best, but, especially if you're a person who has 100,000 comics, why would you spend all of that money on Mylars when you could buy regular bags and boards, which will last maybe not 500 years longer, but it will last your lifetime? I mean, obviously it always depends on the storage of where you store them and how you store books. It doesn't matter if you use Mylars, Mylites, double backs, and, do everything in your power to get the most expensive protection. If you put it in an attic or a basement where there's constant weather changes, where there's dampness or, moisture, or if you lay them flat and you stack 100 comics over them, comics are going to get damaged. So I was always concentrating on things like, saving the most money and spending your money on the actual comics that you love and not the things to protect them. Because Mylars will last 1,000 years, but you won't. The comic will not last as long as the Mylar will. So I've had books that I used to buy when I was collecting comics back in the late 80s, early 90s, that to this day are still in the bags and boards that I put them in back in those days. And I've taken some out, and they've had 9.6s and 9.4s. Nothing guarantees a 9.8. Even brand new comics can get a 9.6. But my point was always talking about not always having to spend the most money on things. And I think that maybe because I didn't always speak, I guess, the most eloquently, that maybe people took offense to it or thought it was an attack or something. I did have an issue with one particular YouTuber. I've talked about this a couple of different times where I did make a mistake. But, people make mistakes. I apologize for it. It was basically a YouTuber where they made a video, and I won't say who it is, but it was a YouTuber that made a video that their information could have been harmful to people and actually make them lose money. I don't remember what it was because this is like going on 7 years ago. And I had the person's phone number, they had mine, we've talked before, and I should have privately messaged them and said, you may want to take down that video because the information you're giving is actually not accurate and it could actually hurt collectors. I made the mistake of making a public video, which was not right to do. And as soon as I did it, I realized my mistake. But you know how the internet is. There'll always be people that'll record stuff. So I did make a public apology. The person just refused to ever contact me or even accept the apology. And at that point, anybody can make mistakes. But if you make a mistake and you ask to be forgiven and you are sincere about it and the person just refuses to either never accept it or just don't respond, they have that opportunity, but now it no longer falls on you because you tried to do the right thing and make amends of a mistake. But other than that, I've never really purposely gone out of my way to try and hurt somebody. I didn't even try and hurt that person. It just, sometimes you just don't think and you just react, and that could have caused a reputation. But I had a quote-unquote bad reputation from the community for the way before that time. And I was pretty much hated on for a long time. I never really understood it. But at this point in my life, I don't worry about what other people think or what other people assume or what other people believe. If you look at how this world is, people are going to believe whatever they're going to believe. And if it's right for them, that's great. I don't focus my energy on negativity anymore, and people have the right to believe anything they want, and my channel has suffered because of that stuff over the years. I don't get credit for a lot of different things I've introduced to YouTube in the comic book community. I don't need it, but the misconception, I think, really just is unfair, but it is what it is. So hopefully that helps. Dr. Valencia Design says, who is your favorite writers and artists? As far as artists, depends on the age. But it's funny. Todd McFarlane, when I first saw his, when he first took over Amazing Spider-Man back in the days of issue 299, I did not like his artwork because it was so different from what, Spider-Man was. Because I grew up with the Steve Ditkos and the John Romitas, and that to me was Spider-Man. And Todd McFarlane, when I first saw his rendition of Spider-Man, especially with those big eyes, I didn't like it at first. But then he grew on me and just really started appreciating the detail and the effort he put into his artwork. Jim Lee is another amazing, talented artist. I mean, you really can't have the X-Men in the 90s without Jim Lee's rendition of them. To me, Cyclops is forever going to be the 90s Jim Lee version where he had that yellow band with the X on his chest going across. That to me was the perfect drawing of Cyclops ever, in my opinion. Love the way he drew Rogue. That was another one that has not really been duplicated. But I mean, if you're going back, I mean, I love artists like Frank Frazetta. I mean, his work in Conan series and many other horror type of comic book covers were iconic. Those would be the ones I would think would be my favorites. But like I said, you're going back to the days of Steve Ditko, John Romita Sr., and many of the Silver Age. I think they were more less is more. But their artwork, especially on covers, for example, always ended up standing out. I mean, you could look at something like, for example, Avengers number 57 with the first appearance of the Vision. There's not a lot of detail in that artwork, but it stood out. Or something like Amazing Spider-Man number 50. Iconic cover. But again, there wasn't major amounts of detail, but they had Spider-Man front and center. He's walking away from his uniform, which is in the trash. It made you want to read the book. Artists that can do stuff like that, to me, it's not always about the detail, but it's, can you get somebody to be interested and want to pick up the book based on what they see. And I always hated comic books where they would do an amazing cover and then the artist that did the inside of the book was a different artist, and you could blatantly see that they had no business doing artwork in a comic book. It's like night and day. And I'm not going to berate any artist, but there are some that just, their artwork is, it should not be in comics. But, like they say, art is speculative. As far as the writers, I mean, you can't go wrong with people like Grant Morrison, Frank Miller, Brian Michael Bendis, Chris Claremont, Alan Moore, people like that. I mean, they wrote classics and definitely great reads. I mean, even Stan Lee did a lot of amazing stuff, especially in the Golden Age and Silver Age. He wrote a lot of stories. Whether he wrote them completely himself, there are people who question that, but you got to go based on what you think is going on. So I would say some of those are my favorites. Let's see. Again, if you want to do anything in a question, just make sure you do it in all caps. Otherwise, I might accidentally skip it. Comic Journey says, do you have any experience with Halo slabs? I have never had a Halo slab. From what I understand is, Halo slabs, I think, are either an Australian, I believe it's an Australian company or a European company, but I believe it's Australia. So it was basically, Halo was created for people that lived outside of the United States who didn't want to spend tremendous amounts of shipping costs to get their books slabbed. So I really would not have any experience with sending any comics to them, because the amount of shipping it would cost to ship it to their company would just not make it warranted. And I've never purchased one, because to be perfectly honest, I don't think I've ever seen a Halo slab when I've searched for comics on eBay. So they are few and far between. Now, I mean, if you're talking about grading companies, I mean, Halo would be put even below EGS, in my opinion, at this point. They are good for people overseas for the reasons that I mentioned. But, I mean, if there was a good enough price on one on eBay, I wouldn't have a problem purchasing it. But I'd be perfectly honest, I'd most likely crack it open and get it regraded. But I've never purchased or owned a Halo slab before. Corey Knight says he actually got a notification. It's hit or miss with your channel. Yeah, because I tend to speak about things that YouTube doesn't like. Like, I don't know how many of you saw the Tucker Carlson interview just the other day with the USSR. I'll just leave it that way. And I saw it on many different live streams. Each one got shut down in the middle of the live streams by supposedly breaking YouTube's guidelines. I would love to know what those guidelines are. So any channel that speaks about anything that will make you question any narrative, YouTube will do its best to either shut it down or make it harder for you to find. I mean, I have over 10,000 subscribers. I've had people that thought for the past 3 years I've been gone because YouTube will not promote any of my product. So, unfortunately, you know, that's something they do. But, you know, the more you grasp sand in your hands, the tighter the grip, the more slips through your fingers. So, for me, I like the fact of the people that come here, because it means, even with all of that said, they're still finding their way to be here, which means they want to hear what I have to say or see what I have to show. So, to me, quality over quantity. But yeah, YouTube makes it difficult for notifications, unfortunately. Comic Journey says, what do you think about pulps being graded now? If I knew what a pulp was, I guess I'll have to show my ignorance and my age on that one. So if you want to write down what a pulp is, I would be more than happy to answer that question. As far as anything being graded, I mean, you know, comics are not the only thing that get graded. I mean, people will grade VCR tapes. People will grade video games and action figures and sports cards and even sports memorabilia. A lot of it is just, I think, people are afraid of the scammers. Because in my days, and I'm sure you can attest this or anybody around my age, before the grading companies came to be, there were a lot of people that would make fake signatures and fake collectibles. I mean, I'll give you a prime example. I wasted a total of $8,000 on a Babe Ruth baseball and a Michael Jordan rookie card that I bought. This was before even eBay. This was back on a place called Yahoo Auctions, where on 2 separate occasions I came into some money and I thought, you know, instead of blowing it on, you know, going to bars and buying video games and garbage, I wanted to invest it. So I took $8,000 of the money I got and bought a Babe Ruth baseball and a Michael Jordan Fleer rookie card. Each one was $4,000. The person with the Babe Ruth said, oh, it was in their family since their grandfather was a kid, and swore up and down it was legit. Ended up, and also I bought a Tiger Woods rookie card. It was that really long card, the first ever Tiger Woods rookie card. So I bought 3 of them, and all 3 ended up being fake. So the grading companies, I think a lot of people use them for assurance that a signature is what, you know, the seller claims it to be, or the comic is not restored, or, you know, whatever collectible is authentic. Now, unfortunately, because it involves money, there's always going to be the shady side of any situation that is going to try and manipulate things for their financial gain. Unfortunately, those few bad apples can spoil the tree. Because, I mean, even what's going on with CGC right now, you know, in the grand scheme of things, let's say they have 10,000 books altogether, and I'm just making up a number, that have been corrupted. in the grand scheme of things, with them grading millions of books, that's not a large percentage. But it won't matter to somebody, the percentage. It matters that it has happened. I mean, if you think about an airplane, not every plane that is in the air comes down crashing. But it's the few times that it happens that makes people on a daily basis concerned that what if? It's that mentality. So for every plane that crashes, there's probably 20,000 of them that completed their journey safely without any issue. But people in life tend to focus on negatives, and they will create a bigger aspect and a bigger reaction. It's like having a YouTube channel. You can have 10,000 positive comments of people saying, I love you, or I love your video, or I love what you said, and it only takes one person to say something abusive and nasty that most people will focus on. And I will be the first to admit, I would be the same way. So when it comes to grading companies or grading anything, I know there's going to be corruption, and unfortunately it's not the product, it's the people. Because when money's involved, you're always going to get scrupulous people. It still brings people peace of mind when they find out something they had is genuine, or at very least finding out if something's fake or something's been altered. At least they now know about it. So I can understand both sides where people say, oh, I never want another slabbed anything again. I can understand that. But there is a place for everything. And it's like the world, you know, we wish governments and medias and other people, other places would be honest so we could rely on their messages. But unfortunately, there's going to be people, when there's any kind of ability to make money, there are going to be people that are going to do the wrong thing. So, you know, when it comes to grading anything, I can understand why people do it, and I can also understand people why some would never do it. Each is right. So hopefully that helps. But if you want to explain to me, the old man that I am, what a pulp is, if there's anything different I can add to it, I will. James Logan says, do you think comic book prices will recover soon? Absolutely 100%. You have to remember, and I'll show you an example of why. If you see anything in the markets or throughout history, you're always going to see peaks and valleys. That's why smart investors say, buy at the top, buy high and sell low. I'm sorry, buy low and sell sell high. Don't do what I just said. Buy low and sell high. But I mean, look at the housing market. Look what happened in the 80s. Look what happened when there was a crash. They rise and they fall. So in true capitalistic societies, a price can only go so low before somebody says that's worth buying, and it starts to turn around. So let's say, for example, you have a house. A house is being sold for $100,000. Then all of a sudden there's a demand for houses, and there's not as many houses. Well, since there are more people looking for the amount of houses, that creates a deficit, which is going to increase the price. But the price can only go so high before people say, okay, either I cannot afford it, or I do not think it's worth it. And that starts to bring the price down. And at a certain point, it gets to the point where it can only go so low, because then people say, all right, now it's at a price that I can afford and is worth buying, and it stabilizes and then slowly starts to go up again. So you're always going to have ups and downs. So anybody that puts things like comic book crashes and they make you live in fear about, oh, the comic book prices are never going to go back up, these are people who have no idea. Either they have no idea how economics works, or they're just trying to make a video that you'll click on so they can get views. And that's, again, going back to one of the earlier things about why people, the reputation about my channel, I'm not afraid to call people out. I mean, if you don't know about basic economics and how systems work, you shouldn't be making videos. So there's a lot of people out there that will do these incredibly dumb videos trying to scare people because they know it'll get views. It's a form of clickbait. So do I think the comic book prices will recover? Absolutely. Let's use an example. Let's say Amazing Spider-Man #1. The original first Amazing Spider-Man, not the 16,000 other redos of it. So Amazing Spider-Man #1, let's say a 0.5, let's just say, argument's sake, it's $1,000. Okay? And that was the going price for a while. As the years go over, on and on, more and more of those comics either disappear because they're damaged or whatever, or lost, or what have you, lost in a fire, water damage or something. And let's say there's less and less over time. More and more people want it, and the price starts going up, and that $1,000 comic is now a $5,000 comic. There still will be people that'll want it, but there'll be some people that'll say, okay, just 5 years ago this was a $1,000 comic, now it's a $5,000 comic. I might wait and see. So it'll be stagnant for a little while. And then let's say it goes from 5,000 to 9,000. Now people are saying, all right, I missed the boat, but now it's out of my price range. I think that is too high. So even though the supply won't go up, the demand will go down, which brings the price down. Now it goes from 9,000, let's say it goes down after a couple years to 4,000. People are not going to focus anymore on the 1,000 where it was. People have short-term memory. So they're going to see the comic went from 9,000 to 4,000, and at that point people are going to be like, all right, it's time to pounce on this comic. And then you'll have people jumping back in, and then you'll see the prices rise again. So it's all based on emotion for most people, and they ride a wave. And I'll give you a prime example. Nobody right now is looking for Eternals #1. Even though you could get it at rock bottom prices now, is comparable to, a year or two before the movie was announced. Or a year or two before the movie came out, while it was announced. But no one wants it because most people don't have an emotional investment in that book right now. That's why most people fail when it comes to investments, because instead of using their logical side of their brain, they use their emotional side of the brain. And when something is skyrocketing, that's when most people buy it, which is the wrong time to do it. And when the prices start dropping, that's when people panic sell instead of saying that's the buying opportunity. And that's why most people will remain financially distraught. For example, the Great Depression. More millionaires came out of the Great Depression than any other time in U.S. history, because when the stocks were at their peak, everybody and their grandmother was saying invest in stocks. That's the wrong time to buy them. But when the crash happened and people had to sell for pennies on the dollar, those that sold at the top, who knew it was coming, bought it back at the bottom for pennies on the dollar. So let's say a stock was, let's just say $500, and then the crash comes and that stock is now worth 50 cents. Just imagine if that person had 1,000 shares at $500 a share, sold them all, and then took all of that money and repurchased even a tenth of what they bought at 5 cents, 50 cents a share. How much more stock they can get for either the total amount or just use a percentage and use the rest as profit and then keep going. Unfortunately, most people do not know how to invest, and they tend to buy things when everybody wants them and sell things when nobody wants them instead of doing the opposite. So comic book prices will absolutely recover. No doubt in my mind. It's just a matter of when, not if. So hopefully that answers your question. Corey Knight says, love the Bill and Ted shirt. Well, thank you. I'm glad you people still know the reference. Comic Journey says, I've seen people... what happened? Oh, it just scrolled. I'm sorry. Give me a second. I've seen people washing their comics with Palmolive and a freaking shower head, and it worked. They're braver than I would. If you're taking your comics into a shower, you're just really going overboard at that point. You have to be very careful when it comes to moisture, because even if you think you've gotten it all, on a microscopic level, if there's microscopic amounts of liquid on the comic, you're asking for mold to start growing. That may take a year, 2 years, 5 years, even a decade to start accumulating. But by the time you notice it, it's already been there doing damage. So people really need to be careful about what they're doing, unless you're somebody that doesn't care and you just do it for a quick turnaround profit. But basically, you're now giving somebody 5 years along the line a comic that's going to be ultimately destroyed. So people don't understand that, on the microscopic level, there are going to be things that you cannot see that are going to cause damage to things like paper. And like I've said before in other videos, and that's why I always really don't like Mylars, other than they make the book look shiny if you're trying to sell it and mislead people that look how shiny the cover is, when it's actually just the Mylar or the Mylite. Unless you vacuum seal them airtight, and there's no ability for oxygen or anything to survive in there, bacteria and other microorganisms are going to grow and ultimately destroy your comic. So when you're using chemicals, and especially with some kind of water, like I said, on a microscopic level, you're creating the ability for bacteria to arise that you may not see for months or years. It'll also speed up depending on if you're in an area with high humidity. Like, for example, me in Florida. So I would never want water near my comics. So just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there. I mean, when was the last time you saw an air molecule that you're breathing? Thank God you don't need to see it to be able to know that it's helping you survive. So, yeah, I've never seen that, but it wouldn't surprise me what some people are willing to do to get an extra $5 on the value of their comics. All right, so let's see. Let's go with Bronze Page Comics says, "Hey, Chris, will grading comics stop at some point after this CGC mess? Will grading comics stop at some point? No, it hasn't even stopped now. There are people that are still going to send their books to CGC. There's lots of things that have been bad in life that people will eventually do. I mean, how many people in Europe knew that for one point there were burger places selling horse meat? How many times have there been in areas where there's hurricanes or tornadoes or floods or, some other natural disaster that destroys or floods an entire area? They'll move back. There were people that lived under volcanoes. So nothing is, unless they get so corrupted that it destroys their business and they go out of business, that just means somebody else will come in and have the opportunity to take over where somebody else left off. So there will be people that will say, oh, I'll never grade another comic again. You're going to get that. But, let's put it in sports perspective. Remember 1995 when one of the baseball strikes happened and they were out for almost a complete season. There were many people that said they'd never go back, and some didn't. But considering there's record numbers over the years of people going, eventually people forget. What brought me back a year later is when I was in New York, the New York Yankees were giving away free bleacher seats. And it was a Yankees-Red Sox game. So to get free tickets, okay. I brought my own snacks. I did have to pay for parking, but I got free seats, and I had my own snacks that I brought in. Got to watch a Yankee-Red Sox game, basically for, I think at the time, the parking was like $20. But people always forget. So it will never completely destroy it, but it will damage it. And it will damage it for some to the point that they'll never go back. But that is the exception and not the rule. But like I said, even right now, with all the stuff that's currently going on with CGC, there are still plenty of people that are going to send their books in. There's going to be plenty of videos I've seen where people just ignore that the situation's going on. So, it depends on the person and, their motives. A lot of people just care more about the money than the principle. So in that sense, there'll always be something that could easily be corruptible because people know people will keep going back. I mean, how many people know what happened with the controversy of Bud Light? How many people have gone back and actually purchased an Anheuser-Busch product? I mean, if you think about it, I think companies like Volkswagen, especially, I think it's Volkswagen, was made by we'll use Scooby-Doo terms, was made by the Razzies. With Rittler. And yet, there are people who drive the Volkswagens. So, look how bad that individual was. And the bad things that individual is responsible for. And yet, people are still buying the car. So, nothing will ultimately destroy something completely. Because even if CGC went out of business, There's other companies, and then there'll be other companies that'll come out of the ashes. So it will absolutely not stop it. There will be people that wish it to be stopped, but it's not going to happen. Let's see. James Logan says, I never met Chris personally, but I watch him because he tells you things, the truth, and it's not what people wants to hear. Bunch of crybabies. Well, unfortunately, most of the world wants to hear things that make them feel good. Well, you know what? If that's the case, then everybody should be eating chocolate cake and candy bars every day because they taste good and they make you feel good. And you'll also die of a heart attack or diabetes or some other problem before you ever hit the age of 40. So not telling people what they need to hear is actually causing damage. And if you care about people, you don't want them to be hurt in the long run and suffering. Because if somebody was enjoying the first 25 years of their life eating nothing but candy and ice cream and drinking soda pop and, snorting sugar like it's cocaine, by the time they're 30, they're going to be in such pain and agony. And what a suffering way to die, losing a limb from diabetes. I mean, would you really want that on a loved one? Just because you're afraid to hurt their feelings? I mean, look at how the world is going right now, with people so afraid to hurt people's feelings. It's not making the world a better place, it's making it a worse place. So, I like to talk about things in the real world, in reality. Not what people wish it to be or hope it could be or imagine it to be, but the reality that we all choose to be a part of. And if you can't handle, like they say, if you can't handle the truth, I'm not going to apologize for your choice to want to, self-harm, but doing it in a way that puts the guilt on somebody else. That's not what my channel's all about. And that's why my channel will never reach the pinnacles it once did. Because most people just don't want to sit there because they'll think, they're being lectured. If you think the things I talk about are trying to lecture people, then you're getting the wrong message. I'm trying to help people have better lives because I don't want people, for example, the things I just talked about, I would never say, go eat candy and cake and ice cream and drink nothing but soda every day because it makes you feel good and it tastes good, because it would kill you. So I would say things like, maybe you should eat some vegetables, maybe you should do some exercise, maybe you should, do the right things. And most people are not going to like that because that requires work and effort. And, a carrot stick is not going to taste as good as a, Milky Way bar. But which one's going to make you live a longer, happier life with less and less minimal suffering? So I tell it how it is. Unfortunately, many people are just not strong-willed enough to be able to handle that. And unfortunately, as they say, you get what you give. If you give nothing, don't be surprised you get nothing. So I appreciate what you said. Cup of Joe, luckily I saw it. Try and put things in all caps so I can see it. But Rob Liefeld is retiring from Deadpool. What do you think? I mean, eventually you have to retire. So to me, it's not like he did it for a year and decided I can't do it anymore. It's not really his property anyway. It's owned by Marvel. So to me, it's just inevitable that you can only do it for so long. And even though he created the character, even though it's a copy of Deathstroke, almost to the T, and if it wasn't for them changing it into the fourth wall breaking character it probably would have never reached its iconic level it's at now. I mean, I would give up on it eventually too if you can't have the say that you want and you don't own the property. Eventually you're just doing somebody else's work. So, to me that's inevitable. All right, so let's see. Comic Journey says they are Australian. Yeah, Halo. Yeah, that's what I thought. YouTube loves to bury my content. Comic Journey. Yeah, I feel you. My other channel, my Bar 911 I can't even make videos anymore. Can't do any live videos. And the reason? There was a video I posted where a famous female actor who was in... I won't say the name of the female actor, but she was the lawyer, the female lawyer in the movie A Few Good Men. So if you want to look up who it is, by all means, please do. But there's a photograph of her kissing a fan on the lips that was probably 6 to 8 years old. And not like how you would be kissing maybe somebody you just went on a first date with, like a peck on the lip. I mean, she was basically, I have to be careful with the words with YouTube. Let's just say she was inappropriately kissing a minor in a way that on the picture was not a kiss on the forehead. And I made a video saying how wrong it was and how disgusting it was. And YouTube not only flagged that video, but when I tried to contest it by making somebody actually watch the video and say, I didn't say anything other than this is despicable and it shouldn't be done, they actually said that they reviewed it and still shut down my channel. So I cannot make more live videos. And even when I tried to appeal it, I could never make another video again because of that. Comic Journey, I will not confirm or deny, but I would say you are probably more accurate than you are wrong with what you just posted. But I won't say the name. Her name is kind of like the, if you've ever heard of the stew company, Dinty Moore, that's the best I can give you. Because if I say the name, who knows? YouTube might shut down this channel. So if you know the female actress that was the star female in that played the lawyer of The Few Good Men, that reminds me of the stew company, Dinty Moore, you will pretty much know who I'm referring to. And you could look it up, and you could see these inappropriate images that I made a video saying how disgusting it was and how people should not do stuff like that. And YouTube flagged my video and made my channel so I cannot make any more videos. That's the YouTube world we live in. So, yeah. So we'll just go as far as that. Corey Knight says, since it's an AMA, what's you go to for music? The last concert you went to. Last concert. It's been so long I wouldn't remember. Actually, the last concert I went to was Billy Joel in New York during a blizzard, where everybody was shut down, but he decided to. It was in Madison Square Garden. He cut the show to like an hour and a half, which kind of stinks because it took us like 4 hours to get into the city. I don't remember the year, but it was when I was living in New York. I would assume it was probably between 2012 and 2015. So whenever there was this humongous blizzard in New York that shut down New York, so that was the last time I went to a concert. It was a good concert, but it was short. And not a lot of people were there because many people just could not get there because of the blizzard. We took a train, and even with the train, it took us so long. As far as music, I am a sucker for 70s, like, soft rock. That's just me. I mean, like, Doobie Brothers. Well, then not everything's soft rock, but I love Journey, Boston, Foreigner, Styx, Queen, the Eagles, Genesis, like stuff like that. But I love like even stuff like 10cc, Firefall, groups like that. That's the kind of music I listen to. But I haven't listened to the radio in years. Probably over a decade. I don't think I've ever listened to the radio because I don't want to hear all the commercials, and I want to listen to the music I want to listen to. So I would always make my own personal CDs of music and just I'd have a 5-disc or 10-disc CD player in my car and just play the music that I loved. So especially I always wanted mostly calm music especially when I was DJing, because I knew I would be going there and I'd be blasting a whole bunch of music, and I wanted something to help me relax. So like 70s soft rock kind of stuff, I would enjoy listening to. Alright, so let's see. And again, if you want to leave a comment, if you want to ask a question, all you have to do is post it in capitals. But also, while I'm waiting for another question, Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, on September, why do I say different dates, months? February 18th, it's definitely not in September, but I might have one in September, so you never know. I'm doing a live auction, and I'll show quickly some comics. Now, you don't have to wait until the auction to make an offer. I did a video about 3 days ago that shows all of the books that I'm going to be selling, and if you want to make an offer on one before the auction, if I accept it, you don't have to wait for the auction to potentially be outbid. So I'll show a couple, just some of the comics. And we got an Ultimate Fallout 4 first print, first Miles Morales. We have an Edge of Spider-Verse #2, first print, triple signed. Conan #1, 7.0. First appearance of Conan. Hulk 180. Amazing Spider-Man #6. First appearance of the Lizard. So that's just some of the books that I am going to be selling, because if you know anything about my auctions, I've seen so many different auctions, which, by the way, my channel was the first one to do a live comic book auction. Back in the days, we used to have people, because they didn't have the live chat thing that they do now, so people would have to email in their bids. So that definitely made the process a little bit more challenging. But I've watched so many other people do their YouTube auctions, and there'll be people that'll have like 500 comics they're going to give away for like 50 cents a piece. I sell comics that people want. I mean, if you want just generic comics because they're cheap, you know, if you buy them because you read them, that's great. Oh yeah, Life is Good. England Dan and Dan, Ingle Dan and Dan, was it Fogelberry? England Dan, that brings back some memories, yeah. But that's the kind of stuff I would listen to. But my auctions, I'm always selling key issues. And the worst comic I am selling, the only ungraded, if you want to call it worst, is right here, X-Men #130, first appearance of the Dazzler. That's the worst comic. The best comic is Fantastic Four, issue #2. So, and everything in between. I even have some Golden Age comics I'm going to be selling. So, yes, mine are going to be more expensive, but as they say, you get what you pay for. You know, it's going to be very hard. If you buy a bundle of 100 comics, it costs you $50, and not one of them is something that anybody really wants other than to fill a run. It's going to be very difficult to sell those. I doubt anybody's going to have a problem selling Edge of Spider-Verse #2, or the first appearance of Dazzler, for example, especially if it ends up confirming that Taylor Swift will be playing the Dazzler. That's why it's been, you know, such a hot commodity. Now, if it doesn't happen, I would pretty much assume that prices would go down. But if it does happen, they'll probably double overnight. So I have my auctions to sell books because I do it to pay bills. So I'm not going to have, you know, I'm not going to do 8 hours of an auction and take home $50. I mean, I have auctions where I could sell, like, for example, the last auction I did, I only sold 4 books. I still made about $2,000–3,000. So to me, I want to sell things that people want, not what people can collect and find at any store in a 50-cent bin. So hopefully you'll check them out. So let's see. Iron Goku says, what is good temperature for comics? I keep mine in a cold area. Is that bad for them? You want to be careful with cold, because cold can create ice particles. And also, if you have a change in temperature, I mean, you can have moisture grow. I don't know what would be the perfect exact temperature, but I would say something in between cold and hot. Like somewhere in the 68 to 70 degree area, because that's not enough to create moisture or frost. You really have to be careful how people store comics. And another thing that I used to really talk against, which is still on this channel, I did a video where people will say, oh, a comic has UV protection, like a Mylar that has UV protection. And I did an experiment back when I was in New York. The video is on this very channel, where I took a generic Thor annual comic, put it in what was supposedly a UV-resistant Mylar, and put it outside for a month to see what would happen. And within a month's time, all of the colors on the book faded to the point it now looks like a current modern day, like, black and white variant. So when somebody says something like, oh, it's UV resistant, people assume that that means that no rays can get through it. The fact that you can see the book means light can get through it. People really need to stop believing everything that somebody in a lab and coat with a doctor's degree with a suit and tie says to you, because at the very least, they're not as accurate as they say, and at the worst, they're flat out lying to you. Like, for example, a mask can stop microscopic particles from being inhaled. I always find that amazing that so many people fell for that. If that was the case, firemen wouldn't need the masks that they wear. They would just wear a generic mask to go into a fire. But yet, the smoke particles will go through one of those masks, and those are about 100 times larger than the supposed viruses that people were saying that they should wear masks over. And it's just, the logic is going out the window. So, temperature extremes are the problem. You don't want something too hot, you don't want something too cold, and you definitely don't want it in a place where there's fluctuation. That's why the worst places to put your comics are either in an unfinished basement or an attic. Because depending on the season, you're going to get such extreme temperatures that, like I said, even if it is on the microscopic level, is still happening. It's just so small you cannot see it. And by the time you see it, it's already done years of damage. So the problem is, people have the situation of out of sight, out of mind. Because for years you will not notice them on a microscopic level, water vapor or bacterias or what have you have slowly been eating your comic. So it doesn't matter what you put them in if you do not store them properly. So the biggest thing to stay away from is storing your comics in anywhere where there is extreme fluctuations in temperatures. Like here in this room is nothing but comic books. I live in Florida. In the summertime, it gets incredibly hot. But I make sure in this room, not only is it because we have central air, but I have a fan on to keep the air circulating. So it will not create such temperatures that it gets so hot that little beads of moisture start growing on the inside of the comic. So these are things most people do not think of and talk about. Even if you have a graded comic book, if you store it in an area where the temperatures fluctuate, inside is going to be microscopic bits of water vapor that are going to create molds and bacterias that will eat away your comic, and at the very least turn a 9.8 into a 9.4. It'll take a couple of years, and that's why all grading companies actually say after about 5 years you should, re-slab your book. They just never explain why. Most people think, oh, it's just because they want more money, which is partially true. But the other part is, again, microscopic organisms are destroying your pieces of paper without you even knowing they're there. That's why there are very few parchments that are surviving that were ever written on paper. I mean, people say the Constitution, but that was written in hemp. A lot of scrolls, if you look at a lot of scrolls, especially in the Vatican, a lot of them were actually written on human skin. If you think that's crazy, look it up. Because human skin, if dried, can last for hundreds of years. Paper's not meant to be that way. Trees last for a certain amount of time, and when they collapse, you see them rot away and turn into dust. But because it's on a microscopic level, you cannot notice these things. So if you're going to store your comics, you don't want too cold, you don't want too hot, and you don't want the extremes in either direction. You want something that's going to stay constant. So, for example, if you have it in a basement, you should have something like a dehumidifier. It should be a finished basement. And it shouldn't be somewhere Like, for example, you don't want it in an attic in Alaska where the cold is going to affect it and you put on so much heat that it creates that water vapor. You know, condensation is what will destroy a comic. And it doesn't matter if it has UV protection or something. Just think on a deeper level. And see, that's why my channel is different than many others, because, I mean, how many other channels can you name that mentioned anything that I mentioned about that stuff in a video before? Most people do not think on that level because they don't do the research that they should. And they don't think long term. And like I've always said about my investments, that is how I think about everything in life. That's why I know that if you don't store comics properly, the microscopic organisms that you cannot see that are there are going to take their time and eventually do damage. So if you know about that, you can prevent it and at the very least slow it down. You know, if you have a house that has termites, it can take 20, 30 years, but then one day you go to walk on a floor and you fall right through. You're not going to notice it for the first decade, the second decade. And by the third decade, you might notice there's a little give to the floor, and then one day you fall through, or your walls collapse or crumble. Some things take time, and if you don't pay attention, you set yourself up for bad situations down in the long run. But like I said, most people don't understand it. Noah says, what is your opinion on MC Pode? I have no idea what that is, so unfortunately, without you giving me more information, I would not be able to answer a question like that. I will blame it on naivety in my old age. Jeep Sahara says, what's best horror comics? I would be the worst person to ask that because I do not collect horror comics. Never liked them. Not that they're bad. It's just I grew up, I never liked watching horror movies because I was like, when I watched movies, I wanted to escape reality. I wanted to go to comedies that made me laugh. I wanted to go to things like Star Wars and other space adventures to escape and see something different. To me, a horror movie, I could just turn on the news and I could see many people that are lost in fires or were shot or stabbed or kidnapped. So I never found the horror genre entertaining. So I think probably the closest thing to a horror comic for me would be Swamp Thing, which shows how many horror. Like, here you go. There is the best horror comic I have. Vampirilla #1. I never liked those covers where somebody's head was chopped off, and there are people that love it, and there's nothing wrong with it. Remember, what somebody loves, another person can hate, and vice versa. It doesn't make somebody wrong. If you love horror comics, for example, just because somebody else doesn't make them bad or wrong, and take a positive from it. The fact that I don't love horror comics means I will not compete for you to try and buy a comic that you may love and have to spend extra money. So you can always look at it from a positive point of view. Like, I love when I buy a comic and everybody says, oh, I would never buy that, or you paid way too much, I would never pay that amount, or how could you buy that comic? I say to myself, I am so grateful for those people because I don't have to worry about them outbidding me on the thing that I want, that I love, that I need, that I want, and end up not being able to get it or paying a higher price than I would have felt comfortable with. So always look at things at a positive point of view. If somebody doesn't like or agree with something you do, that just means less competition. That should be a good thing. Because just imagine if every single person loved horror comics like you do, for example, and then a very valuable comic just shows up on eBay, and every single person on the planet saw it, and they bid on it. You think you're getting that thing for cheap? Now just imagine if you were one of 5 people that saw that book, knew its potential, and loved horror comics. You're going to get it a lot cheaper than if every person on the planet loved it. So don't always see things in the negative point of view, and I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm trying to teach people to think in a different way, that there's always a positive that can come out of anything. And I mean anything. If you see the grand, the greater picture. You have to think of life being guided. Think about a video game where you're seeing it from a top view. You ever have a game where it's like the screen is like you're looking down at the characters, and let's say there's a whole bunch of different rooms they go in. but right now they're in a specific room. But because you can look around you, you know that the next room to the north of them has monsters waiting to attack them. The room to the left of them has a trap that if they open the door, they fall through. And the door to the right is the one they should take. Well, if you think of the people in that game as you only are in the specific room that you can see. Well, if you think of like a higher self or a higher source or God or angelic, whatever you want to think about, seeing the bigger picture, they're trying to guide you towards that door that is safer, even though you don't know why and you don't understand. Because maybe you were going north the whole time and you want to continue to go north. Well, me being able to see the bigger perspective of the game knows that if you go north, you're going to have to attack these monsters that they're too powerful for you. Even though you may want to go that way, that's not the best way for you. So my job would be to steer you towards the one room that will be the easiest way around, even if it takes you a longer route to get somewhere. Because just because a road looks straight, looks clean, and looks safe and is shorter does not necessarily mean that is the best route. Sometimes you have to take the scary road that is full with thorns and bushes and can scratch you and can be scary and it's got twists and turns and it's longer and longer because maybe it gets you to a better destination. And maybe all of the trials and tribulations that you had to go through along the way turned you stronger. So that's why I want people to look at things a little differently. So coming back to your question about, and that's why there's a method to my madnesses. If you like horror books, like right now, if the top 100 horror comics that are the most valuable comics were on eBay right now for $5, and I saw them, I wouldn't buy them because one, I wouldn't know what they are, and two, I don't like horror comics. So because I don't like horror comics, I'm not going to invest my time in them, which means I'm not going to know about what I'm buying or what I'm missing. So the top 100 comics could all be listed in a row, the most valuable comics, and somebody's just giving them away for $5 a piece. I would have probably purchased 0 of them. Now just imagine if you came across those, you'd buy them all up in a heartbeat. You'd be thanking, Cabbage Patch dolls that no one else knew or liked your passion because it gave you the opportunity. So that is why I tell people, don't hate on people that think differently than you. And I'm not saying you are, but I'm seeing many people that do, oh, you're wrong, or you shouldn't do that, or I would never do that. Who cares? See the positive out of it. Less competition means better prices. Knowing about what you're investing means you're going to pounce on something really quick that somebody else may have seen and didn't even glance at. How many people go to yard sales and let's say, for example, my mother knew about Great Depression glasses. Most people would not know what a Great Depression glass is. There were specific glasses that were colored glasses that were made around the 1930s that were made of a certain alloy. I don't think it was lead, but it was a special kind of either crystal or something, but they had so much value in them. And people would be selling them for like 25 cents at a yard sale, and these things were worth hundreds of dollars. One man's junk is another man's treasure. So be very grateful if somebody doesn't like or know your particular genre, because that's advantageous to you, because less competition. So be grateful if somebody doesn't understand something that you love. Don't always view the negative, oh, well, somebody's wrong because they don't view it in your way. So that's what I try and teach on my channel. So let's see if there's any more questions. Silverfish are horrible for comics. Roaches will eat comics too. Yep, roaches, rats, many things. And that's why it does. If you have a Mylar and you have, one of the best backing boards, and there is a bit of bacteria in there, a little bit of moisture in there, that comic's going to eventually get destroyed. It's just going to be in a very nice Mylar. So the Mylar will last longer than the comic will. So spending 10 times more, especially if you have 50,000 comics, you know how much money that's going to cost? I could buy probably a 0.5 Amazing Spider-Man #1 for the price of all of those Mylars. So if you think about it, what would you rather have? 50,000 Mylars for your comics, or an Amazing Spider-Man #1 with that same amount of money? To each their own. Corey Knight says, where do you see the future of the MCU? Seeing how they've tanked and lost $1 billion recently. Well, because they're affiliated or associated with BlackRock and other DEI companies and corporations, they're getting money left and right. They can also take the losses as, tax write-offs. So they can lose billions and it won't matter to them. Where the MC is going to go is depending on the people who run it. There are rumors that Elon Musk wants to help one of the other stockholders, I forget his name, but buy the majority of stocks. If Elon Musk buys Disney, we're back to the old MCU. Because he'll get rid of all of that nonsense. So it depends on management. This is the thing, again, people don't understand how things work. We see it as, they're losing billions of dollars. But yet, people don't see they write it off, so they get tax breaks. And also, there are companies like, the ones that have the equity and intrusion that are going to secretly be giving them billions and billions of dollars. It's like, for example, a bank that gets caught with corruption. Let's say they were caught like the Vatican did, believe it or not, I believe in 2011. The Vatican had their credit card shut down because they were caught trafficking drug money through their credit card system. There have been many banks that have had those kind of situations happen. But let's put it this way. They'll get like a $5 billion fine. Sounds great, right? But if they transferred $300 billion and they were fined $5 billion, do you think they care? Now, the problem is, because most people never research things, people will only see the news headline. Let's say 13th National Bank of Aquatic Fish, because I'm not going to name a specific bank. So that particular bank, they were caught laundering drug money. And you'll see the title, such and such bank fined $5 billion fine for being caught doing this. That's all you're going to see. You're not going to see the headline that they made $300 billion in profit. So Disney, with their current people who control the narrative, you're seeing what they want you to see, which is they're losing billions of dollars. What they don't let you see, and they don't tell you about, because they know most people will never research, is that they are getting billions of dollars in tax write-offs from the losses. I mean, if you own a business, you can write off a loss. And they are also getting money from companies like BlackRock and many other people who are going to give them money under the table that will keep them from doing it. And they do it with Hollywood. Do you really think a business is going to continue to do something that loses the business and loses the profits? Do you really think a smart business person, and these people that own these companies are not stupid, although we're all going to be told they're stupid, but a business that does nothing but do things that make them lose money, if you think that's the case, then they fooled you. Because no business is in business to lose money and continuously lose money and do things that their audiences have, for the most part, said we don't want. They don't care what you want. You could right now, every one of you who owns a Mickey Mouse hat, shirt, comic book, whatever, you could make videos burning them all you want. What do they care when they already got your money? So people need to see these things. Disney will not change unless somebody like, for example, an Elon Musk comes along and buys the company or buys the 51% shareholding and has control of the company, because they're not losing billions. For every dollar they lose, they probably have 10 times that in quote-unquote donations or people giving them money under the table. No business would be able to last this long giving the people that actually anger their customers without a purpose. And it's straight up agenda, and they're being funded. And the media is being funded, so they're not going to talk about it. Why do you think during the Rovid pandemic, why do you think there was nothing but Riser commercials, sponsored by Riser? I hope you know what I mean. Do you think any news company is going to bite the hand that feeds them? Nobody puts two and two together. But eventually you can only be lied to for so long. So Disney will not change with their current ownership. They're not losing billions of dollars. They're just making you think that, so you think you're winning. It's not going to happen. So pray somebody like Elon Musk buys the majority shares of Disney, and he'll do to Disney what he did to now X. You may not like everything he does, but he definitely will make it a lot more accessible and probably go back to the days when Disney used to be a company where they would just make beautiful girls that were skinny, trim, and wealthy the heroes, and the villains were always, ugly looking, scary monsters, and the only solution was to murder them. People think there was a golden age of Disney. Disney taught you that to be the hero, you either had to be a princess or a prince. You had to be good looking. You had to be fit. The villain was always scary, horrifying, ugly. The sidekick was always fat and doofy. And the way they solved the problem is by murdering the person. That's golden age Disney. I saw through their BS long time ago. This is just them showing their true colors. I was warning people about Hollywood's redophilia problem on my old channel, which is still there. My videos are still there, even though I can't make new ones. Back in 2011. One of the reasons why my channel got shut down. Well, not completely, but you can't find a video. Alright, so let's see. GTK comic MCU with BlackRock Zoom MCU will invading third world countries. Don't give them any ideas. Well, they may not invade them, but they'll sponsor them. So you're not wrong. If you know anything about extremely wealthy companies and corporations, they don't fight for anything. They send your sons and daughters to fight for them. One day people will have enough. All right, so we got our first super chat. So I want to make sure I read this. Anybody that sends a super chat, even if you don't put it in capital letters, that's perfectly fine. I can see it. So thank you for the $5 super chat. It says, you might have answered this already. I was late to the party, but how many comics are in your collection? I really like this informal format. Thanks. Thank you, Life is Good. Appreciate it. That's a good question. I would say at this point, I probably, because I've sold a bunch, but not majority, I would say I have at least 20,000 comics. I mean, just to show you short boxes filled with graded comics, and each one holds about 30 comics, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17... I have 17 short boxes just in graded comics alone, and they all are full to the capacity. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. About 30 to 35 long boxes. I have those giant tubs. I have 3 of them filled with comics. I have comics all over the place, and then I have literally probably 100 to 200 unopened boxes of comics that I've had, some of them since I lived in New York, that I never opened. So I got a lot of comics. But I would never know an exact amount because I'm not one of those people that writes them down. I started that at one point when I first collected comics back in the 80s and 90s. And I just recently, probably 7 years ago, I actually rediscovered when I was moving the book where I was writing down the comics and the prices I was paying. I mean, I think I remember that I paid like $80 for my Hulk 181. And that was a lot of money at the time. that was one that got stolen. But after I think like 2,000 books, I got tired of writing them down because I wasn't even... For every time I wrote them down, I'd have another 100 books coming for every one that I'd write down. So eventually I was like, I can't do it anymore. So I would say at least 20,000 books. Between 10 and 20,000 probably. All right, so let's see. Any more questions? Let's see. Corey Knight says, we agree a lot. Tim Sticks, Tucker, Elon, anyone outside the mainstream media. Yeah, that's what it's going to take. People have to wake up to agendas. You know, the only way you can fix something is, first of all, know something. You can't fix a cold if you don't experience the symptoms. If you don't know you have a virus in you, just imagine if you had nothing like a symptom. People would be dying left and right of cancers and illnesses. So you have to pay attention to warning signs. You know, if you're sniffling and your nose is running and you're coughing and you have a sore throat, if somebody is dumb enough to say you're crazy, you're imagining things, or you're a conspiracy theorist, you're not really sick. If you want to believe those people, you can, but it's not smart. And there are people that are supposedly doctors who supposedly have the Hippocratic Oath. They seem to have their oath now to pharmaceutical companies and not the actual patients they claim to want to heal. You know, no doctor these days tells you, eat better and exercise. You ever hear the expression, an apple a day keeps the doctor away? Now it would be a pill a day keeps the doctor permanently in your life until you drop dead. That should be the real thing now. And when it comes to these agendas that are going on, it goes a lot deeper than what you just foresee. Because if you know anything about, like I talk about on my channel lots of times, that is not comic related, you have two ways you can go through your life. One is through your thoughts in your head, and the other is through the feelings in your heart. The right one is the feelings of your heart. You trust your instincts. The wrong one is the messages you think you're getting in your brain. You've never thought a thing in your life. If everything exists, then you're not discovering anything. You're just connecting to that particular energy at that moment. Your emotions are being played. Notice how they want people angry and scared and frustrated. They're all lower vibrational energies. Makes you easier to control. Makes you heavier. You cannot enlighten if you are weightened. So there's a purpose behind it in a deeper level of getting people always angry, always scared, always frustrated, always fighting. It keeps you in lower energy vibrational levels. And most people cannot even have this concept in their mind. If everybody that is in control and has powerful influences are all doing the same exact things, no matter where you turn, even though they're losing, lots of them are losing viewers and losing respect and losing, as some people say about Disney, losing billions of dollars, and yet they're still doing it and will continue to keep doing it and actually try and make fun of the people who oppose it, then obviously there is something deeper than what you are being led to believe or you may believe yourself. The problem is, you can tell people the truth and most people will not listen. And that's perfectly fine. Everybody has to experience things in their own ways. And if some people want to experience the destruction of the world, then do nothing and pretend all of this is BS, and that's exactly what you'll experience. I won't, but many will. So let's see. Sequential Geek, nice to see you. Says, wow, keep a fire extinguisher on hand, please. Well, I have a smoke alarm up there, and we definitely have fire extinguishers. But this room's full of paper, so if it ever went up, it's going up in 2 seconds. But that's why I have... My wife got me... where is it? I put it away, but a fireproof case for my most expensive comics. It can hold like 10 of the graded comics. It is actually waterproof and fireproof. So, yeah. But, yeah, I do not want to experience a fire, so I won't have to worry. But thank you for the concern. Let's see. GGT Comics says, Chris, I will mention this because I read The Punisher for decades. Is Marvel ever going to bring back the original Punisher logo and all? I sure hope so. With the equity and inclusion nonsense, it's funny how they call things inclusion and they don't include everyone. just hear the words when they talk about equity inclusion, and they do not include everyone. Can anyone say hypocrite? So as long as they're in charge, the DEI, and as long as companies will allow this to happen, because they're making lots of money behind the scenes, even though they're on paper losing money, things aren't going to change anytime soon. But if you know anything like investments, what goes up must come down, and what goes down must come up. So eventually there will always be, like even in corruption. The people are done with it, cannot take any more, fight back. The corruption goes down and down and down until it gets to the point somebody can, on the bad side, can say, oh, it's my time to step in. Goes up and up and up. It's a vicious cycle that's happened throughout history. If you don't know it, I highly suggest you look up, go on YouTube and type in The Great Turning, where they show you throughout history there are 4 different parts of each person's lifespan. Usually takes between, I think it's like every 50 years or so, or every whatever amount of time, where you'll have a war, then you'll have prosperity, then you'll have collapsing, then you'll have war, then you will have prosperity, then you'll have collapsing, and it goes on and on and on. So what eventually happens is there'll be a void that some bad person will fill. They will take advantage of people for the longest time, and they will allow them to separate and just sit there and take it. But eventually it gets to the point where it's so controlling and so evil that even the people that don't pay attention to anything wake up. Sound familiar? But before that can happen, a war usually starts, which is not going to be a nuclear war. We're already in World War III. There is no nuclear war. There never will be a nuclear war. Anybody that makes videos telling people there'll be a nuclear war is an idiot and is a person that has no idea how life works and is nothing but a fearmonger getting clicks on a YouTube video. Because if you think about it, if you are in control of this planet, you are a king. A king becomes leader and controls everybody to do their bidding. So the king probably doesn't even have to wipe his own butt, does not have to farm his own food, does not have to shovel his own poop, does not have to create new buildings. He has other people do it. So if you destroyed all of the people, the king has to now do everything himself. So everybody will say, oh, they have underground bunkers and, you know, they'll be safe and they'll be sound. You want to live for the next 1,000 years underground, never seeing the sun again? You really think they're going to kill millions and millions of people who take out the trash and build the skyscrapers and create the food and do all the things that these elitist people will never do? It's never going to happen. But they'll always give you the feeling of what if. Again, it's controlling the energy of the people by keeping you in constant fear. You know, they make videos today saying that Iran is 1 day away from discovering a nuclear weapon. Well, they've been saying that since the 80s. I remember when I was a kid being scared because they were saying Iran is a day from a nuclear weapon. The problem is when it comes to a virus or a terrorist or the next monster, there's always another one that they can come up with or suggest to keep people in constant fear. So, and you can see how I can go off on tangents about something as simple as saying, will the Punisher change? It won't change until people decide enough is enough. If people keep buying these new Punisher versions, they're telling the companies that they may not like it, but they're still giving us the money. They don't care about the characters. If they did, they wouldn't do what they're doing. But eventually, people will decide, I am not going to stand for this particular thing. It's like Popeye. That's all I can stands. I can't stands no more. So Popeye would try and be a pacifist, no matter what, either Brutus or Bluto, depending on the age of the comic or the cartoon character, did. That he would be a pacifist until he couldn't take anymore, and that's when he took his spinach. And that's when he fought back. So it's the same thing with anything. Until people have enough. That's why whether you like Ronald Rump or not, he is a movement based on people having enough of being put down and ignored and ridiculed by these small elitist people who have no touch with what life is really like because they live a pampered world where everything is handed to them. Eventually, people start waking up, and there's a result to that. So the Punisher is going to stay the way he is right now, or she is. I don't know what they've done anymore, or they is, until people have had enough. And then it will change, and it will go back. It always does. It just takes a while because most people are too timid and too afraid to do anything about it. But eventually one person stands up, or one group of people stands up, and it gives other people the ability to follow their lead. So until people grow a pair and stand up for what's right, even though what's right may not seem popular, and understand how things work, because they can call somebody a traitor, but it depends on who's saying it. I'll give you a prime example. If you were in World War II and you were a Nazi working for Adolf Hitler, and you decided, I don't want to be a Nazi anymore. I want to quit the Nazi party and no longer be associated with Adolf Hitler. And you try and leave the Nazi party. Well, you would be called a traitor, wouldn't you? Well, is that a bad thing from the U.S. or the Western point of view? No. But according to Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, you would be a traitor. So just look at what's going on just in the United States of America Corporation. There are people saying that people are Nazis and traitors and all these other things. But yet, is that necessarily what you think it means? It depends on who's saying it. You know, to a farmer, a cow is food. To a cow, the farmer is evil and a murderer. It's all perspective. And unfortunately, most people do not see it that way, and it's not even their fault because no one taught them. But it is primarily their fault at the same time, because this is the first time in history you can question anything and find out if something is BS or not by actually doing what's important and doing a thing called research. The internet can spread lie after lie, but it can also call out BS and share the truth like it's never been before. You have to take a part of it. So if you don't like the Punisher, or if you don't like what Disney's doing, or you don't like what CGC's doing, or you don't like what a media company is doing, don't go there. Don't buy their product. Don't even give them the attention. Because as they say, there is no bad press. They are energy vampires feeding off of your energy. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, whether you call it fiat currency or money, it all boils down to energy. Because you are using your energy to create something. And they give you pieces of paper as reward. Blood, sweat, and tears that comes from your energy. People think it's some tree-hugging, superstitious voodoo nonsense when it's just simple science and simple reality of how life is. Again, microscopic things that you can't see, so you believe don't exist. Well, that's to your own peril. So I think that's another reason why my channel is not popular, because I'm talking about things that most people would never even talk about. Some things I talk about people have never heard of before in their life, and maybe I'm the window to get people to understand that there are more things out there, and if you're tired of listening to BS, and you were drawn here for whatever reason, and you learn something that helps you, then it happened for a reason, and it wasn't just a comic book channel. And like I said with that overhead view of the video game, you only see what's in that room, but maybe somebody's pushing you to come here to learn something that guided you here, even though you didn't understand why. Because you might have thought, I'm just going to ask a basic comic book question, and all of a sudden I get this life advice that maybe is something that helps me think differently. Like Bruce Lee once said, be like water. In other words, follow the stream, go with the flow. The more you go against the flow of the current, the more tired you are and the more it destroys you. Because even if you took a rock, you took a giant boulder and put it in the middle of a flowing stream, eventually it will be worn down to a piece of sand and still be blown away. Fight a current. Yeah, it might make you stronger, but it will eventually drown you. And it will still take you where you needed to go, but you're dead at that point. Follow your instincts. All right, so let's see if there's any more questions. And that's why I put this live Q&A. You can ask anything, including non-comic related questions, because I can't do it on my other channel. Sequential Geek says, it looked like you were about to do the robot. I would never torture anybody with any ability of me to do something that would be considered dance. Collective Inventory said, yeah, I've been hearing that for almost 50 years. He says, now the Cold War was spooky. We're still in different wars. They're just silent wars. And they're not even really that silent. People just have to pay attention. Things always change. You know, remember they say, it is darkest before dawn. Just let it happen. Whatever's supposed to happen, worrying about it changes nothing. Doing something about it without having fear involved, you will always be okay. The problem is the world teaches you to be scared, to be angry, to think woe is me, to feel sorry for yourself, to give yourself no credit, to think you don't deserve anything, and you end up believing that so much that you create the very thing you don't want. I would recommend against that. But sometimes maybe people come here to learn what it's like to fail. Sequential Geek says, it's such a hypocritical concept. Conjecture. I'm sorry, it's just scrolled up. The lecture he preached, nuke my strip malls, traffic. Be hypocritical from my spinach. Call it out. We still in it. Yeah, well, life can be, you know, if you put perfume on a pile of poop, it's still a pile of poop. And there's an old saying I used to live by all the time about how people will give just a little bit of truthful information, like how politicians lie to people all the time. You notice how they're always talking about investigating things, and they're going to have people investigate things, and they're having committees to look into things. They never solve anything. But there's an old saying they used to go by that helped me with this kind of stuff. If you have 99 pounds of ice cream, and you add in 1 pound of poop, what do you have? You have 100 pounds of poop. So it doesn't matter that 99% is good ice cream, good tasting ice cream. The 1 pound, the 1% ruins the entire thing. So you can have information that is 99% seemingly factual. And that 1% that they throw in is enough to destroy the whole thing. So be very careful. Because like I said before, if somebody was going to play the role of a devil, they're going to come at you very well spoken, very well dressed, very calm mannered, very polite, telling you everything that you not want to hear, and try to be your best friend. Why? Because they want something from you. So be very careful of the politician that is in the suit and tie, that is the slick back hair, is well presented, is very eloquently speaking, and pretends to be your best friend. Those, my friend, are the snakes ready to strike. But because you think they are prim and proper and trustworthy and well spoken, you do not hear the lies. Be very careful. The algorithm makes us sane. Thank God, right? Just keep this in mind, my good friend. Nothing makes you anything. You choose it. If you say something makes you something, you're giving your power to something else. Take your power back. And instead of saying the algorithm makes us sane, say this: my choices make me sane. Because if you say the algorithm or anything else, you're taking your power and giving the credit to something else that's not deserving. Give it to yourself. Take back your power. So it's not a knock, it's just an inspiration to give yourself credit. Like, even if you get information from me that helps you, I don't want credit for it, because you made the choice. If something I said resonated with you and it helped you improve your life, it wasn't me that did it. All I did was present an option. It is up to you to either accept it or dismiss it. So what you would do with it is your control. So I don't need, as much as I would appreciate when people say thank you, or somebody sending me a message saying my words inspired them. I love that. But I would also respond to them saying, I'm just the messenger. You chose to, if something I said helped you, it's because you chose to accept it. So that is you. I was just the map that you followed. The map is only as good as the person who follows it. So if the map tells you to go north, to go to the safest route, and you take that route, the map just gave you the option, because the map can show many other ways. It's your choice, so give yourselves the credit that you deserve. That no matter what somebody presents to you, you have the option to ignore it, to accept it, to listen to it half-heartedly, to make fun of it, to take pieces out of it. It's your choice. Give yourself the credit you deserve. Give back your power, and you will never rely on anybody else again. So let's see. Do we have any other questions? I was joking about the algorithm. Oh, no, I understand, but I'm just trying to make a point with that. That many people will always point their energy and their power to something or someone else. Ultimately, you will always make the power. You will always make the choice to do something or not do something. So anything else, think of it as a map, that you chose the route. So the map didn't do anything but point the way that could be the best option. But remember always, the best option is not always, the quickest, safest option may not always be the best option. So there's a lot into life that most people cannot get into, and I wish they would. We got Dr. Valencia Design says, aside from Todd McFarlane, what other artists or writers have you met? I met John Romita Sr. at one point. I've met Nelson, who, if you look at Ghost Rider number 18, the glow-in-the-dark 90s comic, Nelson is the one that did that art. I've met Michael Zeck, which was a really nice guy. Todd McFarlane, when I met him, I did not like him. I've met Art Thibbert, who did one of the pieces of artwork that I got recently graded by EGS. I've never met Stan Lee because I never wanted to wait in line that long, and I don't think he was ever there when I went to comic book shows. So I've never met Stan Lee, and which pretty much means in this lifetime, will not ever meet him, unless there's something that he hasn't told us. Who else? I've met Jay Lee. I've met Rob Liefeld, which I always thought was Rob Liefeld. I've met the Kubert brothers. I think that might be it. That I can at least remember, because it's been, the last time I went to a Comic-Con is the early 90s. The last person I met was Scott Snyder. Right before I moved in New York, in one of the local comic stores that I used to go to, they had Scott Snyder doing a signing, and I had him sign a couple of books. I was actually the first person in line, and actually, I don't know if the video's still up on this channel, but if it might be. I don't know if it was from my original channel that I shut down, or it's still here, so you'd have to go back and look at my earlier videos. But I did a quick little interview with him, and he actually showed me when they were doing that robotic Batman that looked like he had the bunny antenna ears. He actually showed me a sneak preview of it before it ever came out. I don't know if it got caught on camera or not, but that was the last one. Most of the people I talk to are always cool. And that's why I don't want to go to these comic book places anymore with that, because their attitudes have changed at this point. And I liked it back in the days when it wasn't about the money. Like when I remember when I was standing online to get Mike Zeck to sign, I had 2 comics. I would never have more than 2 books for somebody to sign. And I remember the person ahead of me had like 20 books. And he wouldn't charge for any of them. And I just thought, that's taking advantage. I never had more than 2 books that I wanted anybody to sign. And the people used to appreciate that. And some of them would actually stop and, like the guy Nelson, I was the only person at his table. He was in a small section on the side. But I knew the comic he did. I loved the artwork. I had a conversation with him. He actually wanted to stop and talk. Nowadays, everybody's like, sign next, sign next. Back in those days, they would actually want to talk to you. So I kind of like that memory, and I don't want to taint it by these newer people now that just, they feel like they're so overprivileged. They should be very happy that they earned a living by drawing or writing a comic book character and becoming famous and making lots of money for doing it. Because there are plenty of people that have to work at a fast food restaurant or work at a farm or not work at all that would love for a tenth of what they have. And unfortunately, a lot of people have forgotten to do a thing called appreciate. And that's why I really don't want to meet any more people in the comic book community as far as artists and writers. Because I think these days they just won't be the type of people I wish they would be. Now, I'm sure there are always exceptions to every rule. Like I said, Scott Snyder, he's a modern day writer. He was a nice guy, so I'm sure there are still some out there. But, you know, he didn't do it for free. We did, you know. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. He did not charge us. But I'm sure he got paid to be there. But he did not charge us, so I want to be perfectly fair. But he was a nice guy, and I'm sure there are. But for the most part, most people, they just don't appreciate what they got. And it's a shame. So we're going to end it in a little bit unless there's any other questions. But let's see. Okay, so there's conversations with other people back and forth. So we're going to end it at this point unless anybody has any other questions they'd like to ask. Just put it in the capital letters. Don't forget, next Sunday, February 18th, I finally got the month right, I'm doing my live auction. It's at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I did a video just about 3 or 4 days ago, a sneak preview of all of the different comics that I am selling. If you want to wait until the auction, that's great. Take your chance of maybe being outbid or maybe somebody buying it beforehand. If you want to be one of the people that buys one of the books beforehand, you can contact me at peacefulfeelings@yahoo.com and you can mention it. Because like I said, Blondie #1 has already been purchased because somebody contacted me and made an offer that I thought was fair and allowed them to buy it. Now, if you look on the screen below the AI art, which I know one of my lovely viewers loves, Mr. Comic Journey. I know he's told me repeatedly how much he loves AI art, so I wanted to show that really quick. If you look what's scrolling underneath it, I'm looking to make trades for several different comics. I'm looking for things like Amazing Fantasy 15. I would love to own one, but right now do not have the finances to be able to acquire it. I mean, I could by selling a bunch of books, but I'd rather acquire it via trade. Things like Batman 2, Wonder Woman #1, Showcase 4, etc. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, the first print. If you have an extra one of these books, or you have one of these books and you want to trade for other books, about 4 months ago, I did a video of graded comics, which, by the way, I all graded myself, that I would be willing to trade to be able to acquire one or any of those books. So I want to show my viewers that if you are dedicated and you put in the effort and put in the passion and don't give up, dreams can happen, and it's not always based on how much money you have. Please contact me at peacefulfeelings@yahoo.com and let's get a trade going. So let's do today's surprise subscriber shout out. I want to thank everybody that's been here. 4 people were kind enough to hit the like button out of 22 people. So a little bit lower ratio than normal, but that's quite all right. I appreciate anybody that took the effort to be kind enough to hit the like button. So 4 is better than 0, so thank you to those. I'm going to do today's surprise subscriber shout out. You do not have to be a subscriber, but if you want to hit subscribe, that's awesome. And, oh, I'm sorry, it's now up to 26. I refreshed. So I guess it doesn't do a live update. So 26 people and 21 people are watching. I thought that would be a little bit more realistic. But even if it was only 4, I'd still be happy, because those 4 people would have been kind enough to do it. So today's surprise subscriber shout-outs. And by the way, stick around later this week. Keep checking my videos out, because you will not most likely get updates from YouTube, because they don't like to inform people that are not MSNBC or CNN. I'm going to have some other videos coming I have another couple of books. And by the way, I didn't think I would believe this, but I actually bought some recent comic books. I didn't buy them off the comic book store, but books that just came out last month. I just bought on eBay because I heard something about them. So I'm going to be making a video about that. So you might want to check that out because people are always asking me about speculations. That's a book I would definitely think has potential, and I'll explain it when I make the video, so stick around with that. I do have my EGS books that I received that I'm going to be doing an unboxing the next day or so. And another key comic that I got just when I thought I couldn't get any more. Another one happened, and again, it was just a newly listed book. I want to inspire people to think differently. So today's surprise subscriber shout-outs. Hopefully you're still here or you're watching later on. Iron Goku. And we're going to go with James Logan. Both of you are today's surprise subscriber shout-outs, which means if you make YouTube videos, all you have to do is when the video uploads, you could post a link to either a specific video or your YouTube channel. If you'd rather post a link to one of your social networks instead, you can do that. Or if you'd rather post a link to maybe something you sell on eBay, Amazon, any of those places, just remember, it doesn't have to be comic book related. It just has to be, at least kid friendly, at least kid appropriate. You can do any of those links. I'll let you decide. Keep in mind that any link posted in the comment section will automatically go to spam because I have to make sure I check to see that all links are appropriate. So nobody clicks on any link that takes them somewhere like a porn site or some spam thing or anything bad. So if you do see a link in the comment section, it means it has been approved. So go show them some support. Let's be a real community. So thank you so much for everybody out there. Let me know when you take the time, because like I said, and by the way, my last video, I think I got like 30 or 40 comments. I usually get 2 or 3 if I'm lucky. And I was telling people, when people leave comments, it makes me inspired to do more. It makes me appreciative that people are taking the time. So it may not seem like a big deal to you to leave a comment, but it does for me. And I'm sure many people that make videos, especially ones that maybe get 10, 20 views on their channel, I'm sure they appreciate anybody taking the time to leave a comment. So I want to thank the people in the last video that actually listened and were kind enough to leave comments, because it means the world to me, and I respond to every single one of them. So if you want to be that kind, let me know what you thought about the things I talked about. You could be constructive criticism and say I rant on and I ramble off topic too much. As long as it's something that's respectable, I'm willing to listen to alternative viewpoints. I don't want this to be nothing but people just, saying I'm the best at everything, because I don't even believe I'm the best at everything. So as much as I appreciate that, I don't want it to, if it is that, that's great. But if you want to critique, by all means, as long as you do it respectfully, that's perfectly acceptable as well. So if you want to leave a comment, please do. Thank you to everybody that participated in the chat. If anybody can at least, even if you're not going to go to the live auction, if anybody can share or help promote the link for me, it will absolutely help me. Because like I said, when I do the auctions, I'm selling things for as cheap as I can. They will be lower than what you'll find on eBay sales for the lowest sales. But it's to help pay bills. So if you want to support me without joining my Patreon or anything, which you don't have to do, but it is available if you check the description. If you want to contribute, you can. But if you can at least promote my links to the auction, it would help me greatly. You don't have to. You don't even have to tell me if you did it or not. But anything helpful is just, it's a kind thing to do and will be absolutely appreciated. So to those who are still here, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to your comments and the videos I make later on. And again, if you saw one of the video I did 4 days ago about the sneak preview of all the books that I'm putting in the auction, contact me at peacefulfeelings@yahoo.com and make an offer, and you can get it before the auction ever happens, so you not have to worry about being outbid or it not being available. So with that being said, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful night. And don't forget, it's not you, it's not I, it's We Love Comics. See you soon, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and enjoy the Super Bowl.